worried about McLaren. What are they doing? Because come 2026, there are going to be 6 power unit manufacturers, and it seems like pretty much most of the grid is sewn up in terms of picking them. And McLaren left kind of up in the air as to which power unit they will choose. Williams most likely will stay with Mercedes because they really need to have as much stability as they can get. Haas has now become basically Ferrari's mule in place of Alfa Romeo and Sauber. And then AlphaTauri, I mean, if Andretti doesn't turn up, then it's going to be Red Bull powertrains, particularly McLaren, having absolutely no clue as to where it's going to go and who is going to power them. Zak Brown being the master of mystery and being a little bit too focused on IndyCar. But this isn't through lack of trying though. McLaren has been talking to practically every engine manufacturer under the sun. Currently they're with Mercedes, and their tenure with them has been alright and relatively stable, and for the longest time in the V6 turbo hybrid era, Mercedes has been the one to choose, but that is quickly fading away with the Honda Red Bull powertrain. Or who am I kidding? It's Honda. The Honda engine ultimately coming good. McLaren deeply regretting throwing Honda to the curb. Thanks to all of that miscommunication back in the day, McLaren were left right at the bottom of the grid and then having to go to Renault for a couple. So what are McLaren's options right now come 2026? Let's talk about that. Okay, here's something funny for you. Let's just have something funny to begin the actual options with. Yeah, McLaren Ferrari. McLaren Ferrari? Are you serious? That would be the most bizarre shotgun wedding of Formula One I had ever seen. They are historic rivals. They would never work together. It's becoming very, very clear that Ferrari is really going to only partner with one team, and that's going to be Haas. They are basically the whipping boy of Maranello Haas, and quite frankly, Gunther Steiner's more than happy to take it. Yeah, he seems like a very solid guy. I think he can take a lot of things. The last time that McLaren and Ferrari collaborated with one another was when David Coulthard borrowed one of Michael Schumacher's helmets for the 1996 Monaco Grand Prix. They would never partner together. This is just one of the most nonsensical arrangements ever. No way. Absolutely no way. I know Andrea Stella is Italian and he did work for Ferrari, but that connection is long gone by now. Okay, next. Oh, here's a left field option. How about, because Zak Brown really loves Americana so much, as well as IndyCar, maybe if Cadillac are actually going to be making a power unit and General Motors are backing them 100%, why don't we have McLaren Chevrolet? Oh yes, they are a dominant force in IndyCar, and having them being put on the Formula One grid, it'd be a great PR move. Sure, it would technically be Cadillac, but everyone rebadges engines these days. Remember the whole Tag Heuer, Red Bull, Renault thing, because they really didn't like working with Renault, so they called them Tag Heuer, even though Tag Heuer is a watch manufacturer? Chevrolet is a General Motors brand, so it's actually more sensical than, a watch. So I think that would be really, really funny. It's a little bit of a left field option for sure, but actually it kind of would be a boost of confidence for Cadillac if they are going to be making their own power units as well as General Motors. Not only would they have their own team on the grid, but they would also be able to actually get a legacy team, a really big legacy team at that. McLaren Chevrolet. I mean, Aaron McLaren's are powered by Chevrolet already. I asked you lot in a poll about where McLaren will actually go, and the vast majority of you said that they will most likely stick with Mercedes. It's a very solid choice, it's a safe one, with Audi being second and Red Bull powertrains a distant third. So yeah, Mercedes. I mean, it does sound right, doesn't it? McLaren Mercedes. It really harks back to the days of the late 90s with Mika Hakkinen, David Coulthard, and Kimi Räikkönen as well in the 2000s. Oh, that was a really good time. They were really good. Loads of wins, a couple of titles. Yeah, that was a really solid lineup. As a works operation. Since 2014, McLaren were demoted to being a customer manufacturer. In fact, McLaren becoming a customer was one of the reasons that Ron Dennis decided to go back to Honda and bring them back in, and then completely futz up the entire arrangement because neither party actually talked to one another, resulting in a car which was utterly broken from both sides of the angle. And McLaren naturally blaming Honda, then it turned out in 2018, no, it was mostly their fault as well. Zak Brown may be a little bit cavalier, but at least the modern McLaren outfit has some sense of humility. McLaren staying with Mercedes? Fine. But they're not going to be having the same level of success that they did back in the day when they were actually a works operation. But I suppose in the Formula One game of musical chairs, if McLaren were left out, then going to Mercedes is fine, I guess. It will just keep them afloat. Well, they could go back to Renault perhaps, because if you think about it, the 3 years they were powered by Renault were surprisingly good. Yes, of course, the 2018 year was an absolute dire strait with 6th place and really, really mediocre finishes, and 2019 and 2020, they were just on the up, actually managed to find some synergy and actually beating the works team, which is possible if you're a customer. It's very, very unlikely, but it is possible, and McLaren actually proved that. And it was very odd for them going back to Mercedes at a time when they were actually doing okay with Renault. Maybe they should have just stuck with them. But for them going back to Renault for 2026, not really much has been said. It's been a little bit unclear, except for the thing that Alpine said that if Andretti Cadillac actually gets into Formula 1, that they will partner up and provide them engines and power units. So even if McLaren did go back to Renault power, it wouldn't be necessarily their prime customer. Audi, well, they have shown interest, and it could be a logical option. I mean, Andreas Seidel wants the best from McLaren, so maybe they might actually be able to partner up. There were rumours swirling about all the time, but ultimately McLaren chose not to partner with Audi because they didn't want to sell a majority stake in their team. But now they've actually gone to Sauber, that's going to become Audi, so maybe McLaren might come back to them in terms of being an engine customer, but it's not really that easy to say right now. I think for the moment, Audi's just focusing on having a functional engine at the moment. Worry about customers later, because if they get it wrong, oh boy, they're going to be dead in the water as soon as they get on the grid. But with Andreas Seidel at the helm, I doubt that would happen. Red Bull powertrains? Well, possibly. It does kind of make the most sense when you think about it, because it is just a rebadged Honda, and then it's going to be with Ford, and no one really knows what Ford's actually going to do with that arrangement. And everyone was thinking it was going to happen because Rob Marshall, who was really critical in getting the powertrains operation in motion, went to McLaren to become one of the technical directors in terms of the engine department. And everyone was thinking, oh, that might be the scout party for Red Bull powertrains to then bring them in to confirm an engine power unit deal, getting their people in advance to then make sure the operation with McLaren runs smoothly. But no, Andreas Stella has actually gone on record to say, no, we just hired Rob Marshall because he's just good at his job, which, to be fair, if he was working for Red Bull for a long time and led them to success, well, I mean, yeah, he's good at his job. It's sort of talked about, but it's never really anything concrete. Go back to Honda, maybe? Rekindle the McLaren Honda glory of the 80s? Where have we heard that before? That is definitely not going to happen, because Honda has actually come out very clearly saying that they are only going to be coming back to F1 with one team, and that one team is going to be Aston Martin. I don't think that Honda's really going to be in the position to focus on multiple manufacturers. And nowadays, really, with 6 power unit manufacturers in Formula 1, the first time we've seen that in over 20 years, I don't think you really need to have that anymore. The days of Mercedes having nearly half the grid powered by them, that's long gone. You could just concentrate your efforts on maybe 2 teams or just your own team. That's actually a little bit more sensible in this day and age, especially with a cost cap. There, of course, were talks, but they obviously fell flat and they didn't get around to actually making a deal in time. Not to mention Honda's looking at Aston and going, ooh, they're on the up, aren't they? Porsche coming back, maybe? Part of the Volkswagen group? I mean, Audi have actually done a good job with Sauber, and Porsche were looking to partner up with Red Bull until the 11th hour when Christian Horner realised that Porsche basically wanted to take a majority stake in the team, and he didn't like that one bit, nor did Red Bull, the company itself, so that fell through at the last minute because it was going to be more than just a simple power unit deal. Would McLaren really do the same thing? Well, they sort of rebuffed Audi's advances in that similar capacity, so no, I don't think so. I think Porsche's just going to really focus on its endurance categories at the moment. But Andreas Stella has gone on record saying that he would rather not be working with a team and a manufacturer that is brand new to Formula 1 because of the lack of competitiveness and actual understanding of the sport. So really, having the likes of Cadillac or General Motors or whatever is really not on the cards. It's really going to be a team that's already been working in Formula 1 for the longest time, so I think McLaren really needs to have a safe bet and stick with Mercedes because they've been hyping up absolutely everything else. They really need some stability. They have been working well with Mercedes, but I really don't think that McLaren's going to be setting the world alight. And in terms of all the Formula 1 teams and one being not like the other, McLaren is definitely one not like the others. You know, doesn't make sense. Step up.